Hey guys, thanks for joining Nikki Speaks TV today. My special guest today is Rob Kenner from Vibe Magazine. He is a music columnist, he's a filmmaker, and he is a New York Times bestselling author of Nipsey Hussle's book, The Marathon Don't Stop. You are not going to believe what he has for you today. Stay tuned. Welcome to the Nikki Speaks TV show, the Mental Health Series. Join me on this show as I interview mental health experts and business owners to share their perspectives. Let's explore grief, anxiety, and stress, relationship topics, divorce, adapting to life change, and women empowerment. Join me as we talk about and explore mental health together. This is Nikki Speaks TV. Welcome to Nikki Speaks TV. Today I have a special guest in studio. Actually, we're doing it live virtually, and it's Rob Kenner from Vibe Magazine, and I'm so excited to have him. I'm going to give him an opportunity to introduce himself. So welcome, Rob. Thank you so much for being here today and joining us.
Well, thanks for the invitation. It's nice to speak with you and your audience today. Like you mentioned, my name is Rob Kenner, and a lot of people know me from my 17 years at Vibe Magazine. I was part of the startup team for Quincy Jones's, I would say, groundbreaking national monthly magazine about hip hop culture. Since that time, I've worked at lots of other platforms, and currently I'm a self-employed author, and my latest book is called The Marathon Don't Stop, The Life and Times of Nipsey Hussle.
I love that. I love it. So tell me a little bit about your interest in Nipsey Hussle, how you decided to write a book about him, and how you came to do what you do.
Well, it was actually at Vibe in the late years of Vibe's print run in 2009 that I first met Nipsey Hussle. And I think everybody who was there that day was deeply impressed by this young man. He's a very impressive individual. I had never heard of him when he came to our offices to play his mixtape, Bullets Ain't Got No Name. And I was just blown away by the music, but also by his persona and his way of presenting himself. Just his presence in the room really lit the place up, and everybody who was there that day remembers meeting him. He just
What stood out to you at that time?
I guess I would say it was his personal magnetism is the best way to put it. He had a great sense of purpose. He made clear that he was, confident in his music, even though, as I said, he was pretty much an unknown artist to those of us who were in the meeting that day. And he was not only a very confident musician, but someone who had a sense of identity. He spoke about his neighborhood in Los Angeles with great pride. He also spoke about his father being from East Africa and that culture that he very proudly claimed. And there was just something about the way that he carried himself. He had a charisma and, just a electricity about him, if you will. You could tell that he was going places. And everyone who heard that music, I think, was transported back in time. There was one track in particular that I remember called Dre Jackin' for Beats, which I believe is on Bullets Volume 1, where you can hear him flowing over the Gin and Juice instrumental. And, that's not a track that you can play with. You have to know what you're doing on a legendary beat like that.
Right.
And the way that he put his rap down and just the confidence and the skill that he demonstrated it was very refreshing. At Vibe, we had done the first cover on Snoop in '93 and, had really covered that death row period of music very extensively. So, by 2009, rap had gone in a completely different direction, and it was a lot more kind of ringtone rap and kind of, dance records that were more dominant. And so it was quite refreshing for me just to hear some hard LA street music. And And, like I said, the young man who was presenting it was just very impressive. So after he was done playing the tape for us, I made a point of speaking with him and just saying, keep doing what you're doing. We really, I was impressed with what I heard today, and we really will do the best that we can to support you and give you whatever look, we can in the magazine. And I found out later while researching the Marathon Don't Stop that Nip had been trying to get a page in Vibe for a very long time. And
wow.
We had a section, for those that remember Vibe, called Next, which was our kind of artists on the verge section up in the front
on
of the
rise,
book.
So, like up and coming.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So that was where artists like Mary J. Blige and Nas and Outkast got their first look. Mm-hmm. And Nip, as a student of the game, had really analyzed the magazine, and he knew what section he wanted to be featured in. And he had been submitting demos and headshots to our Next editor for some time. And, I was unaware of this, but I found out later that he was actually getting a little frustrated that we weren't recognizing his brilliance. Now, he wasn't yet signed. And so actually he wasn't at the stage of his career where we would have done a Next on him, but he had just such a great ambition for himself. He set a very high bar. And as with every other goal in his life, he persevered until he accomplished that goal. And so, by 2009, by God, he made it up to the office of Vibe, and he did in fact get his page in the magazine before we ceased publication later that year. And, looking back on it now, and I say this in the book, Vibe was about to go out of business as a print publication because, frankly, we did not have as solid of a digital strategy as Nip had. He was on the way up. Yeah, I mean, just, it was a time of transition in publishing. So
true.
Print magazines had to have a digital plan of how they were going to monetize, the transition from selling paid advertising in a print edition to all the nuances of digital publishing.
Electronic and digital, yeah.
Yeah, so it was a completely different business model. And I think Nip understood that. And then we saw the visionary ideas that he had about marketing his career as a recording artist in a time where, the MP3 revolution was really gutting the music industry as it had once existed. When Death Row was selling CDs for $20 a pop, via Interscope, when that Gin and Juice record first came out, that was really the peak of the music industry, not just rap. Like, the music business on a whole was hitting a high point of profits. And it was really soon after that you saw the Napster and the MP3s dig into the profit margins. And Nip later talked about this and said that, for him, he was launching his career and it was as if you were on a plane that was just taking off and suddenly you had to repair the engines during takeoff. It was like a complete change of business model. And Nipsey was that kind of a visionary who understood he had to adapt and overcome. He wasn't going to sit back and let other people figure it out. So, but as I learned while researching the book, he was someone who was smart enough to build his own computers from parts, in high school. So, he was not
not the average guy
at all, not at all. And, I think that is why we're still talking about him today as not only a recording artist, but a thinker, just a visionary in terms of all aspects. Yeah, precisely. So, I knew then, I had a feeling he was special, but, over the course of another 10 years, I got a better idea of, all the great things he would do. And, over time, I realized that I just had to write a book about him.
Yeah, I love that you did that too. So where did you start learning about rap and loving it and, embracing the culture?
That goes back a little bit earlier, but, my little sister, I would say, turned me on to hip hop. She was into LL Cool J very early on.
Yes.
And she had
Hello, crush on him.
her
Sorry.
her radio tape. Yeah, so shout out to Lisa Kenner, who is an educator in Chicago now. But yeah, I mean, you know, Sugar Hill Gang and all those records that impacted, you know, mainstream America. I was growing up in Baltimore at the time, and
Okay.
it just sounded like, you know, something I had never heard before. It was just completely new and exciting, you know. And I remember actually in my high school, the teacher who taught like a video production club for the school, he somehow randomly ended up working on a Sugar Hill Gang video. And so he played it for us in school. And I remember seeing the Sugar Hill Apache video and just thinking, man, what is this music? It's amazing, you know. And little did I know at the time, because I didn't grow up in, you know, the South Bronx, but, you know, I started to learn over time that this was like one of the classic break beats that DJ Kool Herc would be throwing down in his, you know, rec center jams and park jams, you know, many years before Sugar Hill Gang ever rapped over it. So I was getting a blast of that uncut funk at that stage, and it, you know, it really hit me. And so fast forward, you know, I was always crazy about music.
Do you rap?
I wouldn't say I rap.
Bust a rhyme real quick.
No, I've been known to DJ quite a bit. You know, so like when I moved to New York in the late '80s, I was working in a record shop, collecting a lot of vinyl, and played at a bunch of different clubs around the city. And so I was definitely moving with some guys that were gonna become recording artists and do that thing in terms of like hip hop and dancehall reggae. That was our pocket. We were like our you know, favorite you know, mentor, and just, you know, one of my favorite rappers ever is KRS-One from BDP. So he was someone that would come to our parties, and, you know, we would see him shooting videos around the corner from the record shop and stuff like that. So some of the guys that I would run around the city with ended up doing records with BDP and going on tour with him and stuff like that. So that was kind of my, you know, 6 degrees of separation from a legend. And when I was recently, you know, this I think is still going on now, Hip Hop History Month, right? November 2021 is the first ever Hip Hop History Month, and that was just recently declared at there was, so, you know, like we're coming up on 50 years of hip hop, right? In 2023, that will be 50 years since
Oh, wow, I didn't even know that.
Yeah, first park jam in the Bronx. Not park jam, rec center jam at Sedgwick Avenue at the building where him and his sister lived. And basically, as part of the run up to that celebration, Senator Chuck Schumer, I believe it was, passed a ruling that, you know, there was going to be an observance of Hip Hop History Month every November. So that there was a big concert. Yeah, it is huge. I mean, it's long overdue, but, you know, it's happening now. So there was a concert in the Bronx where KRS-One, Slick Rick, and a lot of other legends performed. And I had a chance to catch up with KRS at the show backstage and handed him a copy of my book, which I was very, you know, happy to put in his hand. I know he's a prolific reader and has written a few books himself. And he called me an MC in our conversation, which, you know, was very flattering to me, because he, to me, is like one of the greatest ever. I don't know if you caught his verses recently when he was battling Big Daddy Kane. Well, not exactly a battle, but they were going back and forth, and it was pretty legendary. So but yeah, that's pretty much my pathway into this. So when I found out that Quincy Jones was doing a monthly magazine about hip hop, I just knew I had to be a part of it, and I was very persistent and kept writing letters. These were actual letters with stamps and envelopes I was mailing to the guy that was named as the editor. And eventually he gave me a shot to write a story about a dancehall artist named Supercat, who was another legend, one of my, great favorites in the culture. So that's how I got on at Vibe. 1992, I wrote a feature in the test issue about Supercat. If anybody still has their stretch cover of Vibe, that first issue, it's in there. And when they launched for real in 93, excuse me, I was offered a position with the startup team.
Wow. And it was probably because of that persistence. Do you think that you knew that you wanted to be a part of this? Part of the movement?
I knew, you can know but not be persistent, right? So I knew I wanted to be, but you have to walk that fine line between being too annoying that, people just get tired of hearing from you, or, giving up too soon and I wonder if I would have followed up one more time. So, yeah.
So how do you know? How do you know which one you're doing?
You don't. You just have to listen to your inner voice. And if it really bothers you not to know for sure that this opportunity is in your grasp, then you have to keep pushing yourself, but it's a fine balancing act, and it has to do also with the way you approach people. You have to be respectful and persistent, but, respectful at the same time.
Right. I love that. So tell me, I usually talk about something involving mental health with my guests. And so I don't know if it's from something that you've seen, some artists that you've, talked to or interviewed or what have you, written articles about, or your own personal walk. But what are some things that a time in your life or someone's life that that they might have had some struggles and needed to overcome from a mental health perspective?
Well, I think anybody who's ever taken on a big project has to learn how to manage stress. That's just a part of the game. If you take on the responsibility to deliver any big project, whether it's like baking 1,000 cupcakes or, writing a book, you have to manage your time. You have to set realistic expectations of like your goalposts of how soon you have to have all the ingredients in the kitchen, and how soon you have to preheat the oven, and
be organized.
How long is it going to take to box up those cupcakes? You got to let them cool off first, and whatever it is. So in the case of writing a book about someone who's so respected and so admired and beloved by so many people, I set a very high goal for myself, and of course that comes with a lot of stress and making sure you get it right. And I think people are maybe aware that the book ended up coming out a year later than it was originally planned. When we first announced that this book was going to happen, it was going to come out actually 1 year prior to when it actually did. So there was stress involved in that for sure. And you have to decide that you're going to say, well, if it's not where it needs to be, it's not getting turned in, and let the chips fall, where they may. It's not that, folks aren't working, but if it's not where it needs to be yet, if not every voice has been heard, and all the writing and editing and research and fact checking hasn't been properly completed, you can't rush something that's that important. So a lot of stress goes with that.
Did you ever want to give up?
I knew I would not give up, but I knew that there was a high expectation, from the moment that the project was announced. I definitely got DMs like ranging from "I'm so happy you're writing this" to "you better not fuck this up," and it was said with love. But that's and I knew that anyway. I knew that it was very important that the book do justice to Nipsey Hussle's legacy and place him in the context of hip hop and the context of American history and LA history and all that stuff. And then keep in mind, the book was being written during a pandemic and being written during a period of so much upheaval in American society, you know, and all the
loss and grief and
oh man, I mean, and from George Floyd and everything else that was going on in America, you know, there was a huge outcry for justice. And, you know, I could only imagine what Nip's involvement would have been if he was, you know, still with us during that period of time. I know his voice would have been very loud and clear and, you know, involved in all these kinds of conversations. So,
what do you think his message would be?
I think the message is there. You know, that's the thing. Like,
it never
you know, he was so relentless in delivering words of inspiration and guidance and leaving, you know, sort of breadcrumbs along the trail that others can follow. You know, there was one of the things I remember in our last conversation, which was just a few days after he released Victory Lap. So this would have been in 2018. And I said, you know, everything that you do, music-wise, the interviews, you're always sharing the secret sauce. You're always sharing, you know, how you got to the point that you got to. It seems like, it seems like I said to him, it seems like you want people to follow in your footsteps. You're not holding those gems back, and you're very free.
Not selfish at all.
And I commended him on that. And he said, well, you know, I'm not outside handing out bags of money, but the game is free. And, you know, when we were youngsters coming up, that's all we expected the OGs to do, is just give us a little bit of the game. Like, you don't have to tell us every secret, but, you know, share something.
A little hint or something.
You know, and if you don't do that, it's almost like you're hating on us, you know? So like, if you're secure in your own ability to hustle, we're not going to be a threat to you, you know? So just give us a little bit of the game. And this book is my attempt to share some of the game that I picked up from conversations with Nipsey Hussle and a close reading of his music and really soaking up every interview he ever did. And, you know, all of the people who were around him, and, you know, some of whom are well known, some of whom have never been heard from, you know. But I was able to really do a deep dive over a period of roughly 3 years and, you know, come back with as much game as I could share with people. And it's been great to see the response that the book has had. People have really, you know, they've embraced it. I think there's a lot of love for Nipsey Hussle, and there's also a lot of people that know they should know about him. They sense that he's important, but he never got the proper presentation outside of, you know, his core fan base. You know, a lot of people were just not aware of why he was so important until the Staples Center memorial service. So for people like that, I think the book is very important to just bring them up to speed on someone who I consider one of the most important and overlooked and misunderstood figures ever in hip hop.
Well, and I love that you're keeping his whole mission alive, you know, his life alive, just through, you know, the book that you've written and the work that you're doing to, you know, shed light on him, period, and the works that he's done. So,
but I like your question about, you know, mental health and hip hop and everything, because I think it is an important area to shine a light on. And I commend you for your work, you know, as a mental health expert, because
thank you.
So many people don't prioritize that. And, you know, if you look at the music, it's there in the music. Like, we have records like, you know, Suicidal Thoughts that Biggie did, you know, the last track on Ready to Die. And, you know, Scarface has been very open about his struggles with mental health. And, you know, we've seen other artists like Charles Hamilton go through it. And then, of course, you know, Kanye West has been very open about some of the issues that he faces as well. And it's, you know, it's not it's, you know, it's not something that people are always comfortable talking about, but I think that, you know, art is a great way to start that conversation. And
Absolutely.
when people have the courage to put that in their music, it opens up lanes for other people to talk about things, you know. But I know I went through a lot of stress, you know, delivering this book and making sure it was right. And, you know, I had Nipsey Hussle's voice in my headphones.
What was
You
it
know,
saying?
offering, well, it was saying, don't stop. The shit don't
Yeah.
stop. You know, I mean, the whole concept of a marathon is the idea that you have to find your pace. You can't measure yourself against someone else's pace. You know, the marathon is an individual sport, right?
It sure is. Yeah.
You're competing really against yourself.
Right.
It's a test of endurance, and it's a test of your determination to reach your goal. And you know, everybody wants to cross the finish line first, but the only loser is the one that doesn't finish the race, right? So you know, if you can improve your time and make your personal best, get a little better, you know, you have won. And you know, Nip said this in many interviews that, you know, the whole concept of the marathon was something that he came up with to help himself deal with the disappointments and the setbacks and the stress, and realize that, you know, in order to not give up, you had to take the long view, you know, because there were darn sure a lot of setbacks along the way, you know. And, you know, and everybody faces that. I think that's what makes his story so relatable, and his marathon mindset and that whole movement. You know, athletes can relate to it. Students who are studying for their final exam can relate to it. You know, parents that are trying to pay the rent and put food on the table can relate to it.
Relationship woes.
Yeah, all of it.
Yeah.
All of it. So,
well,
you know,
it resonated with me because I used to run track. So just the title alone caught my attention, and I was a sprinter. So I was one that always wanted to get, you know, I wanted to win the race. Okay. So they used to call me FloJo. And so yeah. But, you know, a marathon is much different. Like you said, you have to be willing to pace yourself, and it's not about anybody else. It's about you getting to that final destination. It doesn't matter how you get there. It's just you getting there.
Right.
You know, it's just that I love that you're encouraging people through, you know, the work that you've done to create this masterpiece, this best-selling book, you know, just to honor his memory. I think that's amazing.
You. I mean, it's still competitive. Don't get me wrong. You know, you want to improve your time, and, you know, if you can, and if you can break that tape at the finish line, so much the better. But you know, the larger idea behind the marathon is that, you know, you are really in a race with yourself, and you are trying to be the best version of yourself you can be, and push yourself just that much harder. Talking about sprinting, I had the opportunity to get a copy of the book to Usain Bolt, and he actually shared it on his Instagram stories, which was a big honor for me. And that, you know, in his copy, I wrote, you know, that he understands that, you know, 100 meters can be a marathon too, you know, so it's all based on whatever. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, the discipline that it takes to just get yourself in top shape and, you know, exceed the goal that you set for yourself is really what it's all about.
And let's talk for a little bit about confidence too, because I think that's the part that, you know, people don't realize is necessary to be able to achieve.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a record that Nip did called I Don't Stress Out. And he says, I don't stress out, I poke my chest out, weight on my shoulder brings the best out, you know, and that is, you know, the essence of confidence is, you know, believing that no matter what obstacle you're going up against, it is a speed bump and not a brick wall. And you're gonna get over it.
I like that.
You just cannot
trip.
That. You know, don't doubt for a second. You know, and Nip has said that also in numerous interviews. Like, one of the first steps is just remove all doubt. Like, don't even entertain the possibility that you will not complete your mission, you know? And if there is a setback, just remember that it's, you know, it's temporary. And as long as you're determined to overcome it, you will find a way. There's always a way.
I love that. Because I think what happens is a lot of times people will have those setbacks and then, you know, they kind of focus on that more so than the resiliency that's needed to be able to start again, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know,
so many times, you know, the problem is not what happens, but the way you process what happens.
Right.
You know? And so you get caught up in the missed opportunity or the thing that didn't go the way you planned, and it gets in your head and you can't shake it from your head. And, you know, in those moments is when the real problem starts, because there always are going to be stumbling blocks. There are always going to be disappointments.
Right.
The difference is if you know how to put it in the rearview mirror and keep your eyes on the road ahead.
Absolutely. Well, I know I was looking on your page on Instagram, and you had a video, and Nipsey was on there, and he was saying something similar to this. Everybody has a natural gift and passion, making art and reflecting on reality. As his life changed and how he was actually changed, how does this message translate to our communities, do you think? Do you remember that?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, one of the things that you're trying to do for all human beings is find your purpose, right? Everybody has natural God-given talents, and unfortunately, not everybody has the opportunity to develop them and put them to work, right? So God blesses us with gifts and talents and abilities, and it's the opportunity that has to meet preparation, right? That's what success is, when opportunity meets preparation. And so you could be as prepared as you want to be, but there also has to be, you know, that opportunity to make the connection, have the spark, you know, ignite the fire, right? So I think with, you know, this question of like finding your purpose, you know, unfortunately, like, look at, you know, Nipsey Hussle built Vector 90 when he was, you know, launching Victory Lap, right?
I went to visit there. It's beautiful. Oh my gosh, I love that place. Yeah, because I used to live in LA, and I went over there. I mean, it's amazing. Yeah.
No, it's an amazing resource for that whole community. And you know, the thing about Vector 90 is that unfortunately it didn't exist when Nipsey was a kid, right? When Aramis Ascadome was thinking about, you know, how much he wanted a computer and, you know, finding a way to get the parts and build it himself. You know, it's unfortunate that he didn't have all the options to pursue his interest in science and technology and engineering and mathematics. And he had to build that for the next Aramis Ascadome. And, you know, and so I asked him that question when we were speaking, you know, what difference would it have made to you if you had a resource like that available when you were a kid? You know, because obviously we know he made choices in his life that later he came to rethink, you know, and he chose to follow a different path without, you know, turning his back on all of his experience and all the people that were part of his life. He was still, you know, carrying a little bit of a burden from those past, you know, experiences that, you know, got him involved in things that later he didn't want to be involved in, right? So, you know, it's important to find your true purpose, and it is also important that all of the potential and all of the purpose can be actually, you know, acted on and encouraged and nurtured and developed. And so, you know, that's what was so important about, I think, the way Nipsey Hussle brought his actions in line with, you know, what he would have liked had he, you know, had those opportunities as a kid. And,
Absolutely.
you know,
what a way to give back, you know?
Exactly.
What a way to give back. So, Rob, speak to someone who may be listening that may need a little encouragement in terms of staying on course for whatever it is they see for themselves. Because I think a lot of times we see it. We're able to see where we want to grow to and get to, but we just, for whatever reason, don't have maybe the courage or the confidence, the consistency to stay the course. So what would you say to someone that's listening? Maybe they're aspiring to do more or to be something greater than they are now.
I would just say don't give up. If you don't see the solution in front of you, just think about like a car driving on a dark road at night.
Right.
There's a lot that's out ahead on the road ahead. You can't necessarily see it all the way in the distance. Your headlights only reach so far up the road. So all you really see is what's illuminated to your eyes on the immediate path in front of you. But, you got to know that there's a lot out there ahead of you that you can't see yet. And you have to sometimes move by faith and not by sight,
right. Right.
And so I do believe that God put everyone on the earth for a purpose. And
absolutely.
When you know that it is in you, you can just move by faith and do not give up. That's the whole concept of the marathon. Don't stop. Yeah, just don't let up, because the main thing is just to keep going and keep the lights on and find a way. I mean, Nipsey Hussle wasn't able to work on creating music every single day. He had businesses to run. He had responsibilities that he had to fulfill and sacrifices that he made, and also adversaries that were trying to trip him up, and
right.
Forces that should be supporting the positive works he was doing were sometimes working against him. And people that
jealousy, envy.
Yeah, exactly. And also law enforcement that wants to shut down legitimate businesses that are providing, gainful legal employment to people that are all in the process of turning their lives.
They need it.
In a positive way, and if in the absence of those opportunities, maybe they would be doing a whole different thing that would not be, good for themselves or the community. So it is an unfortunate fact that happens in life. And, you can definitely get caught up and say, why are these people, going against me? And, why am I facing so much resistance? But if you get in your feelings about that stuff, it will slow you down. And so just try to keep your eye focused on the goal that you're steering towards, and, move by faith, if not by sight.
I thank you so much. You've helped me. I know you helped so many people today just by what you've shared and all that you're doing. I just thank you for your time today, and we're going to go ahead and close now. Thank you guys for watching. I've had Rob Kenner here, and I know that you need to get his book as soon as possible. Stay tuned for the commercial, and he's going to share a little bit more about how to reach him and stay in contact. Thank you.
My name is Rob Kenner. I'm the author of The Marathon Don't Stop, The Life and Times of Nipsey Hussle. It's available wherever books are sold. I am hearing that the first edition hardcover is selling out all over the country, but from what I heard, you can still get them at Barnes & Noble and Amazon. But check your local independent bookseller first, because we always got to support the grassroots. If you want to keep up with me, hit my socials. I'm on Instagram and Twitter at Robert J. Kenner, Kenner. And like the book says, the marathon don't stop, so don't you stop.
Hope you guys love this week's episode on the Nikki Speaks TV Mental Health Series show. Don't forget to like and subscribe. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Pinterest, YouTube, and TikTok. And my web address is linktree/Nikki.Speaks. Can't wait to see you next time.